All right. We got people in there. All right, nice. 42 waiting already. Oh man,
Yes, sir.
it's a lot of pressure.
Little do they know that
Nothing
Genesis is
matters,
gonna
and
show up. Nothing matters. I was gonna say Genesis is gonna show up, and he's gonna have a better jawline than Sephiroth. He's gonna be on way more TRT.
yeah, he's gonna he's gonna hang way more
Mm.
bags of ice from his dick
Genesis.
every week.
Wait, is that something Gact really did?
No, that's something that Clavicular really did, though. It's a
Oh
modding
wait,
strategy.
really?
Like, dude, you got to
Oh
keep up
shit!
with your
Holy
bro.
shit, bro! I can't keep up, man.
I
Just from
know, I know. It's
like
really, it's
when
surprisingly dense. Yeah,
when you have headlines like clavicular hanging out with Netanyahu in Israel, I like
yeah. You're
my
like, this is
ability to
AI
keep up is
generated.
like is yeah.
Yeah, there's no way this is real. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm good, man. Like I can't keep up anymore. This is beyond my capacity. Hello everyone. Thanks so much. Everyone's
hi.
pouring in. We got lots of good stuff to talk about today. It's a good thing I prepared some Kingdom Hearts talk because apparently that is also going to be a thing I'm actually really excited for.
Yeah, it might overtake this conversation.
Audio Freak UK saying Genesis hitting himself with a hammer is his limit break. But that just made me think.
Jawline reform. Yeah.
Yeah, that actually made me think. If you think about it, you hit yourself with a hammer to charge your own limit break gauge.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, they've taken self harm out of Final Fantasy games recently, and it's I don't know, it's a little soulless.
Yeah. Um. By the way, chat, how is the audio balancing? I think maybe from the wavelengths, I might be a little bit louder. Clark, can you talk really quick?
Yeah, I can talk.
Yeah, it looks like I'm a little bit louder. You could boost it on your end, or I could boost it on mine. Either way is fine.
You might want to. Okay, I boosted it a little on mine.
Okay, that's actually great. I think that's perfect.
Okay. All right. Oh, and I guess I'm kind
Okay.
of dark too. That's okay.
Yeah. All right.
All right, let me. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I think we're even now.
All right.
Sounds good. What is that in your background that I hear?
I don't know.
It's like some kind of rattling thing.
I don't know. I don't hear it.
That's crazy. Okay,
Could be
now I
my
don't hear it
computer.
anymore. Yeah.
Okay.
It
Could be
reminds
crazy.
me of when I had like a dying fan on my old PC
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
would make that noise and I would whenever I was streaming games, I had to turn on noise suppression
Oh yeah, just because
to
it was amping up to cool down your system.
yeah, because it would amp up and cool down my system and then it start rattling really badly.
Yeah, the
I don't
death
hear it
rattle.
anymore. So we're good, I think. But
We'll find out.
it's
We'll find
amazing
out.
that I was so um kind of ghetto low key and just
I can't hear very well, which has always been a problem.
yeah.
Like it's my weakest sense.
Mm.
It was almost my second weakest sense, but they saved my eye. But yeah, so a lot of times I'll look at comments and go like, "What was that in the background?" And I'll just be like, "Dude, I don't know." And it was apparently like a train or a truck or I don't know. whatever it is that
Dang.
happens in the back.
Dang. You know what
Not
though?
on
I feel
my
like
barrel.
nowadays we're kind of all
Yeah.
hard at hearing, especially because we have
Yeah.
these things like in our ear all the time, and they're so unbelievably bad for our ears. And we,
There's no
yeah,
justification for them. Yeah,
yeah,
at all. Yeah.
yeah. We just fucking decimate our hearing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I
All
think
right,
we're
let's
ready
pull
to
up.
begin.
I think so.
Okay, let me just. Okay, so thank you for joining us, chat. We have a very lovely guest today. This is one of my best friends ever. We have been
Mm-hmm.
doing these now for about 6 years, and it all started because of a small indie game called Final Fantasy VII Remake that made me crash out in a diabolical way.
You
And
may not
since
have
then,
heard of it.
you probably haven't heard of it. Um,
If you're under 30, fair shot you haven't ever heard of it.
I am probably the only broccoli head who plays this game.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
But yes, we're going to be talking more about Final Fantasy VII today. We're going to be talking about the state of Square Enix and Kingdom Hearts 4 as well. So I hope you're all excited. But first, Schrodinger's baby seal is our guest, Clark, here. If people don't know you or know what you do, Clark, can you tell them all a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I make boomer content, boomer gamer content called Final Fantasy VII content. Most of my specialty is around Final Fantasy VII, apologizing for the remake trilogy but I do variety content as well. I'm just generally trapped in FF hell forever. So, that's how people know me. I also, just have a lot of experience like in tertiary elements of the industry. And so if I'm a little bit more informed than just an average content creator, that's why. A variety of bizarre professional experiences got me close to a variety of topics are adjacent to video games. And so, uh, you know, I know that a lot of people have a tendency to think that I'm some kind of insider, and that's not really my case anymore. I'm pretty much, I don't want to say retired, but I'm just a content creator at this point. You can check out my YouTube channel. I have a podcast that right now is very centered around Final Fantasy VII Revelation, which was announced at SGF. I had a recent pretty viral talk with Max Dude. Ryan was part of that. Night Sky Prince was part of that, as well as many of my other good friends. And I really like bringing community together, even if I'm not necessarily, a part of that. And so, if you like my channel and like adjacent FF creators, I'm a good place to start to get people connected, etc. So, yeah, that's it. That's my spiel.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I want to start by addressing one of the biggest things that happened recently, the death of Ever Crisis.
Yes.
And you're someone who actually plays and like literally keeps up with Ever Crisis too. So what was your reaction to it shutting down?
I was astonished it lasted as long as it was. I thought that I really started talking about end of service at the at the end of last year. There was an Advent Children event that was such a like a phoned in event that it made me feel like, oh, okay, this is losing steam. And I kind of expected, there was no clear schedule during the live stream, which they normally do they have an annual live stream, and it sort of gives us a few months ahead of what summons are coming, what functions are coming, and I just it didn't do that, so I was like, okay, we're kind of on our ropes, and There was also this really clear opportunity with the First Soldier chapters. There was a First Soldier chapter one that had, was released in, over the course of a year, and then two, which was centered more around, Angeal, and whereas the first one was young Sephiroth and Glenn and the Type Zero characters that were, a holdover from the other canceled mobile game, The First Soldier, in the compilation of Final Fantasy VII R. And then when Chapter Two came out, and it was very clearly centered around young Angeal, it just seemed like kind of a no brainer that Chapter Three would get announced at the end of Chapter Two, and it would be young Genesis. I thought for sure we were getting that, just based on like all of the conventions. But instead, at the end of chapter two, the final part of the chapter comes out. They start reusing assets. They start reusing music. It gets to the end. There's like one cinematic, which is pretty cool, and it's Sephiroth's Masamune growing, and that was cool. But then that was it. Like there was nothing. There was no, see Genesis in chapter three. Instead, we strangely got adult Sephiroth as a character, and he was really shoehorned in, and it was really clear that, you know, um, something had shifted to me, in the way that they were addressing how this game was going to come out. And usually, what that means is that they had made that decision, 6 to 9 months prior, and so it ended up lasting a little bit, and they were able to like push out a pretty at least a little less disappointing Dirge event, and and then there was pipeline stuff about us getting before crisis stuff, and I'm like, no way, no way is this really going to come out? Like, as I was hearing about before crisis stuff, I was like, I guess I was wrong about Ever Crisis getting shut down. And then at the exact same time they announced before crisis content showing up in Ever Crisis,
Hmm.
um, they announced its end of service. And honestly, my reaction to it was that I, good riddance. Like it was a little bit too carnivorous of a thing. It's been very clearly the wrong direction for Square Enix and for the brand for a while. I think there was a time where you could say that it was good.
Hmm.
That it was something that like that strengthened, people's relationship with Final Fantasy, and but it was always going to be something kind of temporary, and we don't have a global economy that really has tolerance for that anymore. But back in the days of Brave Exvius and stuff like that, I do remember meeting people like in like from 2016 to like 2020, like meeting IRL people that had those apps on their phone, like Opera Omnia, and even even what was the Pixel one?
Record
God,
keeper.
what was? Yeah, Record Keeper. I knew people that had Record Keeper on their phone, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I love this," and it would kind of give them nostalgia about Final Fantasy, and be like, "Hey, when's the next one coming out?" And it feels like it's been 5 years, and it of course had been, and so at a certain point, it was kind of keeping the memory of Final Fantasy alive for people. Now it's not doing that. Now it's like the only thing I felt like that was really keeping Ever Crisis alive was like hardcore people that really wanted outfits for their specific favorite characters. And if you look online right now, people are blaming X character not getting enough outfits and stuff like that. But the reality is, people playing dress up for their favorite Final Fantasy VII characters cannot sustain a live service game anymore.
Right.
Just we don't have a market or presence for that.
Yeah. I see it as twofold for why Ever Crisis shut down, like two specific reasons. The first kind of being that Final Fantasy right now, I feel like is just at a trough. Like it's just at a very weak point in its brand presence overall. And I feel
Yep.
like this type of gotcha is what you do to cash in on an IP when it's at its strongest, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at when Brave Exvius launched, Final Fantasy was like banging at that time. It was just when Remake had been announced and 15 was on its way. And so interest in Final Fantasy at that time was at like an apex. And that was the perfect time to launch that. And Brave Exvius did amazingly well. It had a 10-year run,
Yeah.
which, as far as I can tell for gotchas, the average gotcha lasts less than 3 years. So
Yeah.
for it to have a 10-year run is absolutely absurd, right? And it was big enough for them to have conventions around Brave Exvius, which is utterly insane. So
Yeah.
I think that's the difference between launching something at the franchise's peak versus launching a gotcha right now. And the other thing speaks to what you were talking about with the market. I think that it is becoming increasingly hard for Square to compete specifically with Chinese gotchas, which are
Hmm.
just absolutely dominating right now. If you play a Chinese gotcha, it is, I'm going to use a word I know my chat hates. It's quadruple A, man. It is like the amount of budget that they are able to spend on things like animations. It's just out of this world. It's a completely different tier than a lot of the games that Square Enix has been putting out on the gotcha front. And so, yeah, South Korean gotchas also, as Crossy mentions in chat, are like really, really, really good as well. And so I
Yeah.
think that competing with those is something that they have to do. And I look at Ever Crisis, and not just Ever Crisis, honestly, but most of their other gotchas that have come out over the past few years. And they're just dated by design, even. Like, they are not something that I could introduce to someone who's really big into Hoyoverse games and expect any sort of conversion there, right? They would look at this and think that it's dated, that it's boring and grindy, and it's just not the type of game that, or the type of experience that something like Genshin is going to offer those same people. And so I really do think that their next move is probably making something like that. But even then, I feel like if the Final Fantasy brand is going to be slapped onto it, you have to strengthen the FF brand again. So that means that it all kind of circles back to FF17 being something that we really haven't seen before, that kind of moves the industry forward and really kind of redefines what the Final Fantasy brand is. If you have any thoughts on that.
The only way for a mobile title to succeed from Square
Mm,
Enix is that it is such a bizarre, lightning in a bottle killer app that it brings people to the brand,
mm,
not the other way around. The brand, like you said, is not strong enough to sustain it. And even if it, like, let's say, let's say, for whatever reason, they came upon, some, fountain of youth style game development method that is just, that would put them in the quadruple A, category of design. And they were just to make, like, say, Love in Deep Space, but for, Cloud and Zach and Genesis or whoever and Titus and, all those
that'd be a
people. and
banger,
and
by
it
the
was
way.
this the same level of quality and animation, etc. Fun gameplay, which Labs has good gameplay. It still would not compete with something that has no identity, because it so depends on its identity to sell itself that you either have to pretend like these characters don't attach themselves to some other thing, which will often, like, detract somebody that's like, I want to get into a new thing, or I want to pick up this app, and then they find out, oh no, this is some other, like, investment. Like, I'm with you that the brand needs strength, before a mobile mobile gotcha slop is going to be the kind of cross marketing it needs. Like what I like if we talk about what really they could spend their gotcha slop on, gotcha slop budget on, I would rather than make Netflix shows. I
Yeah.
think that's that. They're more Magic collabs. Like I think they've kind of run their course with that. But although I'm sure that there's going to be additional collaborations, for a couple years every now and then, because of how successful. Like the fact that Final Fantasy has collectively outperformed every Marvel crossover with Magic the
Mm.
Gathering means that there is still like these untapped spaces for it to go, but mobile is not one of them. And I think I think we like on the question, there's non Final Fantasy games we're talking about here, like Near Reincarnation. I'll tell you, Near had a better chance of survival were it not one of the most aggressive gotchas I've ever seen. Like I
Hmm.
honestly think it was more aggressive of a gotcha slop than even Dissidia, which Dissidia Duellum is very pay to win, but you can at least clear all of the story content, which is just like characters talking to each other on cell phones and being cute, and that's legit. All that you get story wise from Dissidia Duellum FF, but Near Reincarnation, what they did was they took the draw of Near, which is its story and its narrative,
Hmm.
and they locked that behind Gotcha. And that's I think why it failed. I think Near, had it been in a different body, would have outperformed Final Fantasy even in mobile. Just because
Yeah.
that's where Final Fantasy is as a brand. It's like very, like you just don't really connect it to young audiences right now. But
Mm. Yeah.
yeah,
Rock Howard in chat says that hell, Final Fantasy 14 mobile is dying in China.
yeah,
And that's also a really good point too, because I think that Final Fantasy 14 mobile was a great idea on paper, right?
yeah,
Because they're looking at things like Genshin and they're saying, could we convert Final Fantasy 14 into a similar experience? And they even like removed the subscriber model from the mobile
yeah.
and they turned it into a cosmetics gotcha. But there's just no way I think that you would look at something like FF14, and of course I love FF14, but I just think that from the lens of someone who let's say plays Honkai Star Rail, that they're going to look at FF14 and be like, oh yeah, that looks like the type of game I want to play.
Yeah.
I just think and this isn't to say that 14 is like a bad looking game by any means. I think it's a beautiful game, but I think that the visual appeal for that audience isn't going to be there. Um, it doesn't really have the type of like character designs and like modern anime aesthetics. I think that that demographic is looking for, and that seems to like really resonate with the younger audience. I do kind of feel that Square is running away from the identity of anime, right? And trying to like, you look at something like FF16 and like there is a deliberate intent there to separate themselves from other Japanese things and other anime things. And I think maybe if you listen to some of the worst voices, that's a good idea. But I think that if you're really dialed into the reality of the situation, where Gen Z is, where the industry is currently, I think that actually they should be utilizing that more than ever, right? Like that should actually be their key to unlocking that growth.
Well, and it's wild because they actually have a corner on some of the best anime in the world. Like they are the producer
Mm-hmm.
of some of the best anime that's ever been made. I mean, like FMA, like right now the
Apothecary
Apothecary
Diaries.
Diaries is huge.
Yeah.
Um, so they are not. They have a lot less red tape to go through to kind of tap those markets, than say even Capcom, which has really divorced itself from that identity, and also, They do have, I think, Japan is still uh, a very loyal Final Fantasy country. Like, Cloud and Tifa are still very high on favorite characters. They rank up there with like Mario and Link, like they're top 10 characters still. Like they probably wouldn't even hit top 20 in the West, and so it is impossible to divorce that from, their identity, but you're right. They're like trying to hit this other, market. And but I think where you and I don't know if we differ on this. It's just I don't think that that's necessarily a mistake. I just think that if you're going to do that, you have to recognize that, if you're going to target, the general adult base, you better come correct. Don't come with, something super sloppy. Like, and I'm not saying Final Fantasy 16 is a sloppy game, but I'm going to say that it touted itself as, a very, you know, as like something that was a big risk, but it realistically was probably the safest game they could have made. It was so reactive. Like they used the same combat system as, something that had peaked 5 years prior, using a genre that had peaked 3 years prior with the Game of Thrones thing, and it was very reactive. And um, like cinematic gameplay had already, not that, that there aren't good games that you would consider cinematic, not like, God of War is gonna, suddenly stop selling, you know but there was a cultural pushback to games that played like movies, when the game came out. So it ended up being like this very safe and reactive game instead of something that was pushing anything forward, And so I don't think that, especially in an economy where the only people that can even afford to game are, people over 25, um, you know, or the independently wealthy. Like, I don't think it's a bad idea to target them, but if you do recognize that they have more discernment, and they have more, like, I think they just will generally reject things, that don't feel authentic. And I'm not saying that Final Fantasy 16. I still have a soft spot for a lot of Final Fantasy 16. I think it was one of the best performed games of all times. I
Mm.
think, it launched Ben Starr's career, and I think that's really good because I think he's good for the industry. He's an advocate for the industry,
Oh,
and I love
100%.
him dearly. But and there was a lot of good stuff that happened there. But again, it's just sort of a example that, like, okay, maybe your targets ought to be, something that's more in the, the firm AAA and not quadruple A target, and younger. Or if you're going to hit, like, hey, I want this game to be for everybody, I want this game to be for 25 and up too. uh, don't come with a 5-year-old typeset for a game. Don't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel as though touching on like kind of like should they lean into being like Japanese aesthetics or being more
Yeah.
Western? I think that they could technically go either way. I just find it a
Sure.
little bit harder for them to, in an authentic way, accomplish leaning into the Western aesthetics, you know? Whereas I feel like if they really lean into what is more true domestic and that they kind of grew up in, it'll be a little bit easier to create works that are compelling. And just how popular I think Japanese subcultures are right now, that it's a lot easier to say we're doing that, but we're giving it a AAA budget. And I think there's
Yeah.
going to be an inherent appeal in that on its own right. And I
Yeah.
do kind of think back when you look at what was called the golden era, where Final Fantasy 6 through 10 were coming out, then I think that's kind of exactly what that was. Is that we're going to take these really Japanese concepts and we're going to give it this massive AAA budget, and especially relative to other Japanese games, if you like the style and the coolness of it, we're going to give it the type of budget and production values that are going to skyrocket it to the moon and back. And I think that was a really successful formula. And I think that
Yeah.
alone kind of elevated it and separated it in such a way from other Japanese role playing games. And now it kind of tries to lean like a little bit more Western, but it's really
Sure.
hard for them to fully commit to that, right? And so, if you think about like 16, for example, they kind of had to have like Koji Fox, for example, come in there and and like kind of guide the production a little bit, guide some of the story elements to actually keep it on track and keep it actually authentic to Western culture and the
Hmm.
European cultures that it was trying to be derived from. But I think as I play like Type Zero right now, which is like absolutely one of the most
Banger. Banger.
Japanese, yeah, like the original
Yeah.
PSP version. Look, I'm such a nerd. I
Yeah.
actually have like the physical copy like right here on my desk, by the way.
Yeah. No, that
But
gives you a
like,
bunch of moral leverage right now too.
yes. But what's so interesting though about this game, I think, is that
Hmm.
even in the Western logo,
Yeah.
they have kanji, right? They have, I was gonna say Japanese tech, technically Chinese, but you know what I'm saying. It's Japanese writing per se in the logo to emphasize that it's not Western. And I think that's actually like okay to do now. I think that a lot of it is
Yeah.
like a lot of the place that they're coming from is from a position where they're looking back at the previous eras where it was not okay, right? And
Yeah.
some of this stuff takes so long to get out that when they planned all this stuff, it was from that era, and now it's actually rolling out. And so
Sure.
maybe they have kind of realized that and they are actively dialing back, but it just takes so long for things to actually show up now that, you know.
Yeah, that's a big issue. I mean, and we always, when you and I are talking, we're usually talking about the series identity, and
Yeah.
that's such a moving target, and it's really hard, and especially when you're competing against things that, like we talk about, who we're competing against with mobile is countries that have a much, we'll say more optimistic view of things like AI.
Mhm.
Like the amount of AI pushback you get when marketing the West is pretty severe. But if you're, there's other countries that really celebrate it, and so we have to compete against that too. And so you try and generate an identity, um, and but you have this you're beholden to your audience, which has a set of uh, values that make it difficult to enjoy certain types of AI generated content, of things that there's a variety of things that some people may, I myself included, may consider inauthentic, and so if you're trying to keep authentic identity, and not mistreat your employees, then we're back to how can you possibly, in this global economy, make something that is relevant today, not take 6 years, and you just can't. It's really hard. And so I
Yeah.
think the answer is kind of you don't let other people's view of your identity adjust your artistic vision. Like that's the real answer. But whether people do that, that's hard. Especially because you're asking for money from people. You usually to do a project, and you're beholden to that. It's a shitty and difficult thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, this is an opportunity for them to also leverage their name, right? Hideo Kojima, for example, getting the money to do Death Stranding, thinking from
Mm-hmm.
the perspective of an investor, Death Stranding and the very concept of it, I feel like is so weird that it's just
Yeah.
like, would you actually invest in that money? But Kojima is fortunately in a position where he's able to like really leverage his Rockstar name to be like, oh, it's
Hmm.
Kojima, it's gonna be weird, but he's a weird guy, and people love that, and people love the type of creative things that he does. And so, yeah, I'll just write him a
Hmm.
check, and like whatever he makes, I know that
Yeah.
I have confidence in it, right? But I don't know if
Yeah.
Square has that confidence anymore to be like,
Name
yeah, we're
another
Square
person that could
Enix.
do that. Yeah, name another
Yeah,
person that can do that. Nomura can't do that, and
yeah,
um, so yeah, it's a
yeah.
tough one.
So it is a pretty tough one, which actually like leads me into something else I want to talk about, right?
Yeah,
Square Enix's profits right now are pretty good. But
yeah.
most of that is because they've kind of stopped releasing a lot of their niche AA games that they were doing the past few years, like in the span from like 2020 to 2024, I would say. They had all of these niche AA games coming out. They've kind of stopped doing that. And now they are heavily leaning into remakes and remasters. And that's the primary reason that their profits are up. This is good for them short term. But do you think that them over relying on these legacy titles is going to stifle innovation for them?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Obviously, obviously will.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know what else they should be doing. Like it's really
Mm.
it's a vicious time right now to try and do anything creatively. Like it's really hard.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
um, I'm like a lot of people. Look, my timeline is currently full of Assassin's Creed 4 resynced footage. And people really enjoying that, and there's this safety to remakes and remasters, um, and then there's this stress about bankrolling somebody that isn't something that isn't doing that. And the theory is that like a really functional artistic endeavor like Square Enix is using safe bets and safe money to bankroll innovation. Like honestly, that was at one point the primary role of like gotchas and merchandise, is that it would be a temporary quick cash injection to help uh, you know um, increase uh, liquidity in developing these big risky projects, or even funding these little indie developers into making things. And like they did that a lot, and they really only got I think they really got Power Wash Simulator out of it. Like in terms of, which is awesome. Power Wash Simulator is easy to be like, what are you talking about? That game is bars. I strongly recommend Power Wash Simulator to any adults, especially somebody that's got any kind of anxiety or stress in their lives. It is so good.
Mm.
But like that is a I cannot think of a more lightning in a bottle thing than Power Wash Simulator. And that's theoretically what you should be using these gotchas and these and even merchandising money to do, is help liquidity to take risks to grow the company forward. But it's hard right now because nobody knows what the future of gaming really looks like. We're in a mature market for console and PC gaming, and a lot of things could change the structure of games. I mean, Grand Theft Auto 6 could completely revamp gaming as a thing for years. It could have a year's worth of impact. Or it could have a very temporary, like, oh, everybody, but some interesting things are happening with Grand Theft Auto 6. Like, it's not releasing day one on PC, and so it's gonna sell a lot of PS5s around Christmas, and probably just PS5s because nobody buys Xboxes. And you know, and then people are going to have a console, and then what are they going to do? Are they going to see what else is out and check that out? And hey, I remember RPGs. What's Final Fantasy Resonance? Is that going to happen? There's a
Hmm.
chance it does, but we don't really know. If it widens the maturity range of the market or not. We also don't know, what the next viral insane hit made by one guy will do to the industry. Like every now and then, like a Jimmy Balitro comes out, or or Toby Fox, makes a new chapter of Deltarune, and it completely changes the conversation about what games should even be. Like, so how do you predict that kind of stuff? You don't. And then you also have mouths to feed, and businesses to run. So, it's a bummer that the answer to your question is the focus on their legacy titles is going to stifle innovation. Is yes, it is absolutely going to stifle innovation. I can't imagine them doing anything else though. So, unfortunately, innovation is going to have to come through, like the way that their legacy titles, are either reintroduced or remade,
Hmm.
or the next in an anthology series or sequel series, comes out.
Yeah. So all I got from that last part is that they got to do the Parasite Eve remake, and then we'll be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, they could do weird stuff. I mean, they really could. I would love to see them figure out how to like take Xeno back, you know. That'd be that'd be wild if we got a Xenogears remake, and then they just redid this, the first 6 episodes of Xenogears in a completely different way. But, like there's even, I think, risks with that. I think the HD 2D sort of remake of Live Alive, is a good example of this thing. It's like that actually did really good in Japan, like really, really good in Japan,
Mm.
and virtually sold nothing over here. And so again, it's like uh, you go. They even have to be selective about what legacy titles they bring back. Because you and I know what Parasite Eve is, but I could talk to my neighbor who's 27 and he'll have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah. They would have to make it look like Resident Evil. It had to be very like very RE adjacent looking, in
Yeah,
order to
which
get them in. And then they play it and then they realize it's nothing like RE. So then there goes the temptation once again to make Parasite Eve a little
yeah.
bit more like Resident Evil. But I
Mm-hmm.
do feel like that might be their best shot at upward momentum
It is,
because,
yeah.
um, because it is adjacent to something that
Yeah.
is popular enough. But the thing is, will they realize that, but then also not try to directly trend chase what RE is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Blitz in the chat. It's wild because Parasite Eve already had remixed gameplay. If you think
It
about it,
kind of
would be
did,
the
yeah.
perfect balance between blending from Resident Evil. Yeah, yeah, it
I
would
know.
be because 7R already
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
gave it the system that it needs. So I do think that they need like this injection of new plasma, new IP, and I think that they need something that also for Final Fantasy that's very new. And I can't help but think about how Square Enix has really relied on Nomura over the years to create that, right? He seems to be the one that is consistently the best at creating new works that appeal to millions of people. And I feel like, I mean, I don't even want to say there's been an absence of it because the 7R series has been kind of filling that void. But even
A little.
still,
A
yeah,
little. Yeah. Like, I mean,
yeah.
he comes in and he's got, I mean, his name is the name on 7R1, but and I'm not saying he doesn't have massive implications, and that he couldn't put his foot down and fully make any decision he wanted on the project. But we really associate that project now with Hamaguchi. Um,
Hmm.
and And on the subject of Nomura, I think a lot of people, and I hear this a lot from a particular brand of viral negativity grift, that where things really went sour was when Sakaguchi left,
Hmm.
for Square Enix. But I disagree because Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 were fantastic for both the brand of Square Enix in general and Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts. Where I think that the if you're really gonna mark like what was the actual downward shift, and there was upward momentum at the time that kept going, but it slowed and really started to drop, and I think it really had to do with, and you're gonna love this, versus 13.
Let's
Versus
go.
13
He
when
said it,
versus
chat.
13 when
Let's
versus
go.
13 was taken from Nomura, that was the most instrumental direction change in the Final Fantasy namesake brand and its
Mm,
injection on the planet. So yeah,
fucking based. Let's
I
go.
know.
Let's go. I invited him on here to tell the truth, and he did
Just that I did it.
it. What else is there to say, chat? What else is there to say? Um, Obviously, I agree. I kind of
Hmm.
think that that is when he was like really creating like this new IP in such a. I mean, he was just on fire at that time, right? Because he was coming off of Kingdom Hearts 2. Um, he was also a lot more involved in the creation of this game, Type Zero,
Yeah,
than I think a lot of people will give him credit for. That was
yeah,
like him collaborating with Tabata on that is actually why Tabata was kind of subbing in for him with Final Fantasy 15 in the first place, because the initial idea was is that they worked really good together on Type Zero. And so I feel like they have this void that of his presence making new things, right? Because obviously he has been involved with Seven Arm, but he hasn't had like his new big thing out in a while. And I feel like that to me has been a little bit also responsible for kind of a decline in the Final
yeah,
Fantasy brand.
yeah.
Because people,
I
people, it's not to say that other creators and other artists on there aren't, popular too, but I think people look for his appeal.
Yeah, and I mean, I love Expedition 33. So please, don't come at me. Reminder that I am the first non-developer to break 1 billion damage in Expedition 33. I was the uh, first consumer to beat the internal damage record of 3.4 billion damage on Expedition 33. I beat San Folioris's internal record. So I love that game. I broke it to death. So I'm not saying this from any point of like, one's better than the other. But I'll never forget when they did that collaboration um, and you know Nomura like penned in this art, this Expedition 33 art, and
Hmm.
he probably did it on a paper towel, in his bathroom, and then sent it in, and it looked so good. I think it kind of reminded me that just he is casually such an unmatched artist, and he really has like this sort of raw animal artistic talent that I really do miss. Like there's nothing unsoulful about what he touches, and yeah, like it to the point where it got kind of memed and turned into this thing, and people make jokes about it, but God, does it feel like it's really missing from the universe right now? Like I
It does.
really miss that feel. Yeah,
It does. It does. And
yeah,
that's why I'm so happy that Kingdom Hearts 4 is coming. It was
yeah,
actually one of the most successful reveals during this year's E3 season.
100%. Yeah,
And, part of something I've been thinking about recently was that, FF characters were used in Kingdom Hearts initially to popularize Kingdom Hearts. Do you think it's time for Final Fantasy characters to show up now, but for the opposite purpose, to have Kingdom Hearts
100%.
help repopularize Final Fantasy characters. You know?
100%. And
Yeah.
like in my estimation too, I think that like the news that just dropped today, by the way, is that looks like D23, the Disney
Mm,
Expo, is going to have a Kingdom Hearts panel, and the big eyeballs to that. I my guess, and I mean this legitimately, is that that will have more buzz than anything Marvel related at D23. Like there is a hunger and thirst in like the Disney fandom for this. Let alone the video game fandom, and the Disney fandom's a lot bigger than the video game fandom.
hmm
It's a big serious thing. Like when I talk to the youths of today, they much more recognize Kingdom Hearts as a brand, than they do Final Fantasy. And I think it's time, like you said, like I know that Kingdom Hearts 3 had the very controversial choice to try and generate its own identity, and as a result, it shied away from inclusion until it was DLC time for Final Fantasy characters, and I wish they hadn't have done that initially. I think that it's always been inherently part of the way that the the IP functions well, but now we're in the spot, like you said, that you know, Disney, the Disney adult, they're gonna show up for Kingdom Hearts in droves. It's now more accessible because it's on Switch too, and so it would be a really good opportunity for there to be like,
mm.
some strong Final Fantasy crossovers, particularly for games that are out now. So I know people are tired of seeing, Cloud and Tifa and Aerith and Sephiroth in the game, but they need to be there because Final Fantasy VII Revelation is coming out this year, and Final Fantasy 16 came out several years ago and isn't going to be on the Switch too, and we don't know if Final Fantasy 17 is even in production at this point, so
I
yeah,
would hope so. I would hope it
yeah,
is.
I would hope so
Because
too.
if it's not in production right now, we will be old by the time it comes out. Um, but yeah, I mean, also too, Kingdom Hearts 2 kind of left the Cloud versus Sephiroth arc at a bit of a cliffhanger. So I would hope that Kingdom Hearts 4 would kind of go back to that, right? And interestingly enough, Cloud and Sephiroth kind of like disappear off into another dimension whenever they do that fight. So I do kind of think Cloud and Sephiroth showing up in Quadratum would be so interesting to me. In terms of the appeal of Final Fantasy within Kingdom Hearts, it's also very difficult for me to separate it. I think one of the things that I think back on a lot is just how cool it was the first time I was playing Kingdom Hearts 2. And you go to Olympus, you're in the underworld, and Hades pulls out fucking Auron from Final Fantasy X.
Yeah,
You know? A character who
yeah,
logically would be in the underworld. And that's just such a hype moment and such an interesting way to utilize both IPs. And then I
yeah,
think about, say, Kingdom Hearts 3, and you have the Frozen world, but it's
yeah,
literally just Frozen.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
that's like, I mean, like, it is literally just Frozen. And I feel like people maybe forget that was how Kingdom Hearts used to use that cross section of IPs in like a really interesting and fascinating way.
yeah,
And they don't do that anymore because they're so focused on the Disney stuff, which maybe Disney has restrictions in place that we don't know about and doesn't allow them to touch on that. But I just think it sucks that we can't do it anymore. Andrew Brown, thank you for the
yeah.
super chat.
Thank you.
No, Cloud and Sephiroth's story into the went they went beyond the time.
I
I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean by that.
I
Story
kind of
ended.
get what
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think there was a
yeah,
bow on
yeah,
the Cloud Sephiroth
yeah,
storyline in
yeah,
1 and 2. While I agree,
yeah,
remake. We could have safer 2 arm safer Sephiroth. We could have it could bring in all the dumb meta stuff. Since it's a
yeah.
sequel or whatever. You can remake the Cloud and Sephiroth fight from 1 and 2. Yeah,
It's so funny
yeah.
how in Kingdom Hearts 1 they have like a shorter Cloud, not from Advent Children, and he's just shorter and stockier. And then when they switch over to his Advent Children version, there's just no explanation for like why he is like 5 inches taller and a different build. And it's just like, yeah, that's Cloud though. All right.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's what happens when you absorb the
Yeah.
black materia into the Buster Sword is you become like 6'1" instead of 5'7". That's
Holy
canon.
shit. I need
I
to
know.
absorb the black materia,
I know
brother.
black materia is how you look, Max. Black materia, Max.
I'm not
Max.
short, but I don't
I know
think anyone's
you're
gonna say
no,
no to
no,
an
nobody's
extra
gonna
five
turn
inches.
down. No, I'm sure you wouldn't. I'm sure you wouldn't, buddy. Okay. All right.
Okay. Speaking of an extra 5 inches, um, we've been going back and forth on each other's shows now for like about 6 years. In the
Yeah.
process, we've become good friends. We've met in real
Mm-hmm.
life. And so I have to circle back to the premise of one of our first discussions.
Mm-hmm.
Why the fuck did we defy fate in Final Fantasy VII?
Do you mean the fate of the planet? Like that's
Yeah,
what we're talking about, just the fate of that planet. It's just
yeah.
a spicy remake, guys. Um, no, I really do. I'm still not sold that this is some kind of just remake for the sake of it. I do think that there is at least enough symbolic messaging in the game to let us recognize that there is this conversation that the developers are having with the fandom about the nature of memory, the nature of fate, the nature of all this stuff. And I do think that it will ultimately result in a way that adjusts our overall experience of Final Fantasy VII. And so I do think that we are defying fate for a reason that will get may not satisfy everybody. Like it's a really hard thing to do. Um, but I think anything they do is better than nothing at all.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of whether this meta payoff has some literal link, like it's literally uh, Sephiroth from the future and Aerith having a chess match that allows for Final Fantasy VII to have a different ending point. Or if it's just it happens to have a different ending point and maybe doesn't necessarily connect to the Advent Children canon the same way. Um, Either way, I think that conversation is meant to be addressing fate, and I don't think that the message that we're trying to take away from that to this day, I don't think that the message that we're trying to take away is that you can't change fate. I don't think that's I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that's ever been something that really aligns with the core themes or calls to action that Final Fantasy VII has. Um, I could be wrong, but it would be almost like an ironically sad way to end a story that has so much commentary on capitalism to make this such a soulless exploration of just taking the same people's money twice. Like I really think that there'd be a dark irony to that, and I don't think that's what they're doing.
Right.
But if I'm wrong, I'll turn harder than any of us.
Yeah.
I think that. I think there's a solid
Uh-huh.
chance that I think one of the things that's happened in our long relationship too is that um, you have been freed of expectations. You have been, you've faced several ego deaths in your journey with this, and you're kind of along for the ride now. I am
Mm.
less so. Like I really do need this game's messaging to be on point. I need it to hit in some sort of way. It doesn't need to hit in the exact way that I predict. I don't give a shit about that. I in fact would like it not to. I would like it to surprise me legitimately. That
Mm.
would be the biggest gift it could give me. Um, but I think as a result, I'm going to be harsher on this game than you are. I
I agree.
think, yeah, and also I think you're just looking at it like this is going to be a really fun video game, and I really need Square Enix to step up with the in the fun video game department. And I do need it to do that as well. And I think that it's showing off all of the things that it needs to show off for fun video game department.
Mm.
Like it one showing off video gamey stuff at Summer Games Fest was a really solid choice. Like yeah, like there was like the opening. If you compare this to the opening video, the teaser trailer for Rebirth, it was like it was cryptic discussion and Zach walking Cloud into Nibelheim. And it is the most online fucking commercial imaginable because nobody knows why that's interesting at all unless you are so deep in the woods of the fandom. You know, if you were to show that at Summer Games Fest, people would be like, why is that interesting to me? It's not at all.
Yeah.
Instead, what they showed was they showed like no mystery box stuff. There was like a few whispers and a yellow flower for like a second and a half, but it was mostly people doing Fortnite shit and beating up stuff and showing off cool monster design. Like there was virtually nothing in there that was really meant to feed the people that were super invested in the question of whether this project diverts or not. Like there
Mm.
was no food for that for those people because those people are like 1% of 1% of the fandom of the target market. Instead it did the video game thing, which is its target market, you know.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I think there is something really cool and unique about showing people that this is a video game where you can fly across the entire world, not just an island, but the entire world on an airship. And at any point, you can jump down and explore the environment. And I think that that's super cool. And I also think that the weapon fights are something that's also fairly on the unique value proposition side of things. And so I feel like emphasizing those traits is going to appeal to a lot more people than just being like, you already know what Final Fantasy VII is. So we're just
Yeah.
going to like show you the characters and a logo and you're going to be excited and it's going to break the world. I think that that's what they did with the first trailer and it worked because the Final Fantasy brand was at that point where you could just show the back of Cloud's head and people would be like, ah, you know? And I think that
Yeah.
now that doesn't work. So we kind of started at a different position and we've ended at a different position. And so I think that they were really smart to respond to that in the way that they have now.
And I want to give credit to Hamaguchi for really taking control of the PR here. And I think
Mm-hmm.
um, what he's shown is a tremendous awareness of just not only where Final Fantasy stands as a brand in the world, but also concerns within the fandom. Like every single interview, he's tried to really say, look, ignore previous instructions. I'm the captain. I'm telling you, you know, the all of the core marketing of the game, the unknown journey, defy fate, defy destiny together, all of that stuff is still completely in play. Listen to me, Hamaguchi. You know, um, you know, I know you may have heard things said by another guy, Kitase, who works for us sometimes, but listen to me. There are no guarantees. We have not guaranteed to you that this will link up with Advent Children.
Mm,
And what he means by that is we're not guaranteeing that this is a direct prequel to Advent Children. And then he's even made statements, and we've all made videos about this. We've all made many videos about this, because that's what the content cycle is now. Every time he opens his mouth, we make a video on it. That you would even consider the remake a continuity of its own, a canon of its own, and that's, I think, very important and aware messaging, that keeps people discussing and investigating. So, what Hamaguchi is doing is he's recognizing that the deep fandom reads interviews and cares what he says, and that the rest of the world doesn't. And they want to see video game. They want to see video game at the Summer Video Games Fest, you know, and so that makes me feel good about Final Fantasy VII, as the thing.
yeah, yeah, 100% agree. Um, I guess, and for me, I don't really have like a set outcome that I'm looking for. In fact, I would go as far as to say that I am perhaps the most free FF7 fan on earth right now. I
You
am
are.
the one guy.
I'm jealous of you. Yeah.
I'm the one guy that, like, no matter what happens, I'm just like, yeah, that's what Revelation was about, and that's cool. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not tripping.
Yeah.
Like,
Revelation explained. It was Genesis all along.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like, because I mean, like, literally anything. Like, they could do, like, oh, characters who died are now alive, or they can keep them dead. And either way, I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
They can go in pretty much any direction. It can be a remake, an Evangelion rebuild, a sequel. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Let's do it, man. And I think it's funny. Chat, I challenge you to go back and listen to our discussions from like 6 years ago or 4 years
Yeah.
ago. And how very outcome dependent I was during those discussions about like what I feel like needed to happen. And now I'm just
Yeah.
like, hey man, it's all good. It's
Yeah.
gonna be okay. And I
Yeah.
kind of, like you said, I think I'm going to like Revelation more than a lot of people do because of how free
Yeah.
I am. And I feel like a lot of other people will definitely be crashing out with regards to it because I think that no matter what they do at this point,
Hmm.
somebody is going to be really mad.
Yeah, and I'm so deep in this thing that, like, I kind of need that. Like, there's a couple of outcomes that if they happen, I will crash out. Admittedly, less than most. Admittedly, I've inoculated myself to like a lot of different things. There's a lot of ways this could go, but also, like, I've generated like some serious resentments in the fandom, and like seeing those people unhappy is like a thing that I look forward to, and I don't like that about myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what are you gonna
Yeah.
do?
I
That's
mean,
where I'm at.
like, yeah, it's time, brother. Ego
It
death.
is. I know.
Return to the live stream
Yeah,
metaphorically.
I'm
That's
my revelation. Yeah, my revelation is that my ego needs to die, and I need to get out of my own way, which is always good advice, obviously. But I think I think one thing I will say is that I am I'm really ready for I'm really it's such a bittersweet thing because I really have enjoyed doing this, having this discussion about
Mm-hmm.
this thing. I'm sure our friendship will survive because we rarely talk about this stuff anyways. We talk about very dumb stuff all day long. But I will miss talking about Final Fantasy VII and the lead up and what comes next and all that stuff. But I am also very ready for it to be over. I don't want there to be a secret another project that's a FF7R4. I don't want any of that. Like I want this to be a very you know definitive bow tie on what Final Fantasy VII is, and yeah, so
Okay,
bad.
but alternatively,
No.
alternatively, creative director Tetsuya Nomura.
All right.
And you know what that means, brother. You know
I
what that
know.
means.
Well, look, I'm
It's
okay
gonna
with
at
him
the end.
being.
There's gonna be a secret movie.
Yeah.
Reconnect Final Fantasy VII.
All right. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
That is his style. And then
yeah.
30 years from now, like yeah, when his disembodied head is in a vat, Futurama style, he'll be making reconnect. Uh,
So I mean, we already kind of got that at the end of Dirge of Cerberus, right? When Genesis
yeah,
wakes and scoops up Vice's body, right?
I'm telling
It
you,
says that.
I'm telling you, this is how they solve that problem. This is how they
Yeah,
solve that problem. So for people that are wondering what
yeah,
we're talking about, at the end of Dirge of Cerberus, which takes place 3 years after Final Fantasy VII OG, there is this giant, uh, like foreshadowing event that has remained a mystery where Genesis, who we don't know, we at this time we don't even know his name is Genesis. We just know that it's J-pop star Gact IRL
yeah.
picking up Vice's body. He hadn't been named yet. It was just G, which we all assumed was for Gact because that guy's name is Gact. Why wouldn't we think that was Gact? And so he flies off with Vice's body. And then the only reference we get to that is um, like a year later when Crisis Core comes out, and Vice instead picks up his body when we find out that he's in fact Genesis, and it's this whole thing. And uh, I think one of the things that would be a added bonus to you know um, this timeline or this continuity having a different path, even if it generally resolves similarly with character fates, is since we're going back to Deep Ground guaranteed, and we pretty much have confirmation that Genesis is in the game. There was a Billy question um, where Hamaguchi was asked by some guy there, like, is Genesis going to return? And he didn't he just looked dead at the camera, office style, and was like, you'll have to wait and see, basically saying, yeah, he's going to be in there. So, like, the one thing we'll say is that if this doesn't lead directly to that continuity, they never have to clear this up. They never have to. They never ever have to. Yeah.
Wow. But that's gonna like leave this mystery because everyone's gonna always wonder what did they originally plan to do with that. Part of
Yeah.
me actually likes that because I love the fact that it's just agonizing that we just never know.
We don't need to
But
know. It's fine. Some
but
mysteries are
uh,
good.
but I also feel like given Nomada's track record and
Yeah.
his desire to always tie everything together, I feel like it's entirely unlikely that he would just leave that kind of vacant, especially knowing that so many people are looking for
If
answers there.
if there is to be some canonical connection that makes this uh,
Yeah.
a sequel, like the
Yeah.
way that you mean sequel, um, then the place to put it is obviously during that period of time after Dirge of Cerberus, where Genesis is trying to I don't know, address some threat in the future, and that future threat could be the Sephiroth that ends up coming back in time and changing, changing at this time. Like
Right.
that could be the way that they do that. And I see that being the most and only way that we get like a real sequel. And I wouldn't even put that as super high because it feels like they're doing too much with the game as it is. Like it feels really hard to
Mm-hmm.
do that. Or that ends up, leading into our next question as to the thing that they ultimately solve with. And I'll let you ask the next question.
Which would be, do you think there is going to be DLC for Revelation? And if so, what do you want it to be?
I don't want it to be that. I would like that. I would like that answer. I would like that to be something that gets resolved within the core narrative. And I think they're in they're in pretty deep with like locking pieces of the lore behind lost technology at this point. Like they before Crisis has always been lost technology, and then it gets announced on technology that is getting announced as soon to be lost. It was like the choking on so much irony, and so I don't think DLC will be lost technology. I think it's probably more, it's easier to salvage, and then there's always YouTube and recording and stuff like that. But still, there's I don't like it. I like you to be able to play through the games, and what we're talking about though is there's that Epic Game Store leak, and I do think that you always have to take that kind of thing with a grain of salt, because when you register a game with Epic, um, if anybody's ever tried to do that, there's a form, and it is good practice to just sort of submit possible DLCs, so that you have that as kind of a placeholder. Um, that said, some of it has specific wording like a story season pass, and that's certainly all the rage these days. People would be real upset about it online, but it's always this calculation that companies make as to will the outrage outweigh the profit, and the answer is very sadly often no. And so there's a chance that they're doing something like that, but I would hope that all it is like pre-order bonuses, because pre-orders are sadly like they're things that help. I don't recommend anybody pre-order, but I don't necessarily morally penalize companies for engaging in the system that they have to. Um, but pre-order bonuses are always usually something that's like, oh, this is cosmetic or this is interesting, but it has no real value to the game. Um, if they did something like story DLC, I would hope that it's being developed. It's something that is reactive. Like it's the one time where I'm like, I like reactive development. It's for DLC. Like The Witcher as a love letter to the people that all enjoyed The Witcher 3 made several very expansive DLC, including one that's coming out like next year, like insanely,
Mm,
and that's a different deal than them developing a part of the game that they then price lock behind DLC. Like if the story expansion is something they have not worked on at all yet, and this is just a placeholder in the event that say the game does really well, fans are clamoring for it, and this is a way for them to, you know, um, write a love letter to the fans. I'm okay with that. Wrong place to put stuff there is like important story details like is this a sequel or not should not be behind fucking DLC. Like honestly things that connect it to like fringe compilation stuff is really where it should be. Like if we're going to get more dirge stuff, put it there. Or if we're going to get young Sephiroth story. I know a lot of people are like, we got to get the young Sephiroth stuff, instead of the Zack stuff. I would actually rather like us just focus on the stuff we've got right now, resolve Zack, resolve the Dream Worlds, resolve the choices stuff, resolve Stamp, resolve the fact that we've got most of the plot of the game still left in the third act. Like resolve all that stuff first, and then put the fringe compilation stuff like Young Sephiroth and maybe Glenn stuff in DLC that they develop after the game is released. That's what I want to see from it.
100%.
Yeah.
Josh Z, I want to thank you for this super chat. He asks,
Yeah.
what do you make of Hamaguchi confidence about Revelation, especially in comparison to his nervousness about Rebirth? It's very interesting to me. I thought he was confident about Rebirth. I think the only time I saw the developers nervous was with regards to Rebirth's ending. And I think they knew that Rebirth's ending was not going to be well received by a certain amount of the audience because it was
Yeah.
taking some pretty wide swings. And I think people expected to see a pretty faithful adaptation of Aerith's death, and they did not get that with Rebirth. So I think that was the only
Yeah.
nervousness I really sensed with Rebirth.
Um. So like there have been times where Hamaguchi has said, I was really nervous to see how people reacted to this or that, and he has kind of changed his tone, and I think that's more that he's become. I mean, personally, I think that's more that he's become a confident head of Creative Studio One. I think that has more to do with his PR chops and his professionalism than anything. Although the one thing that is standing out is he's talking about how he's played through the game 44 some odd times, and that there's one scene in particular that makes him cry every time. Like him having an emotional reaction to something is is an interesting sales pitch, but I'm still not going to put it too far beyond the fact that he's a pretty passionate guy. Like I'm not sure if you guys recall, he was choking back tears, on the Game Awards stage. I think
Mhm.
he really does care about this stuff. Um, and so I don't know. I also think that Rebirth was a remarkable game, and I think it was such uh, an insane iteration, and so I do hope that the way that he feels about the jump from remake to Rebirth, he has that same feeling about the jump from Rebirth to Revelation. Because I mean, like the difference is pretty astonishing. Like I'm going, little self pitch. I've been going through with my doctor wife, remake part one again, and seeing how kind of small and insular the game experience is, and how like it's really carried by these character interactions and not so much game stuff. Like there's combat, which is a big draw, but other than that, it's really carried by like the momentum of these story events. And like Rebirth is just such a different ball game, and for him to say like in my head, as when I like picture playing Revelation, I'm still picturing just like Rebirth with flying. But what he's saying is that it's even more than that. And I'm kind of curious what that could possibly feel like. What kind of experience does Revelation have to be that if you go back to play Rebirth, you feel like you're living in the Stone Age? Like
Right.
that's a wild swing to me. Yeah. That's my
I
response
do,
to
I
Josh. Yeah.
do, I do wonder too, like with how they've kind of positioned him to be the new Mr. Final Fantasy. If they
Yeah.
aren't positioning him for that for FF17, which I know a lot of people think would be impossible for Creative Studio One to be working on right now, but I don't personally think it is. Um, but it just seems like
Well,
every
who?
time they
So
position a guy like this, he ends up being like the next mainline guy, you know?
yeah, which which I mean sounds like a death sentence
Yeah,
at this point.
because usually,
Um,
usually if the game
yeah.
doesn't succeed or is controversial, as every FF has been post 10, after you become the main FF guy, and then it comes out and some people don't like it, they kind of throw you under the bus.
Well,
And
so an interesting thing that I would be curious to see is what the credits look like for Kingdom Hearts 4 at this point of view.
mm,
Because I do think that, now it would be impossible for his name to not be on there. I wonder if we're going to be surprised at where his name shows up on Kingdom Hearts 4.
right,
Um, and because, he's now the effective head of, the remnants of CBU 1.
right,
And so that's always been, uh, the King one or two mainline titles, sometimes remake, and then Kingdom Hearts has always been in that, creative division. And so the answer to whether or not Hamaguchi is going to be the head of 17 or not, I think really is really going to be answered when we find out what his true role in Kingdom Hearts 4 is. How involved he is. Like, are we going to see him at marketing events for that? Because,
mm,
Tetsuya Nomura does not like to go out in public. And Kingdom Hearts 4, who's going to be the face of Kingdom Hearts 4 for, interviewers and stuff like that. And um, I would not be surprised if we see Hamaguchi more involved in Kingdom Hearts 4 than we probably expect from this stage, simply because, you can deduce he's got this connection to the studio that's making it.
right.
And I'm not talking about Square Enix, I'm talking about CS1. So, yeah, I don't know. And I also know that, whatever Final Fantasy 17 is such a closely guarded secret that it does seem a little difficult to operate in a space where you're potentially got a credit on Kingdom Hearts 4. You are traveling the world to talk about the end of your trilogy. You are playing the game 44 times. You have a family, and you're making Final Fantasy 17. So I see why people are maybe like, he might not be that involved in it. I can see the pushback. But, we've been surprised by things before, like that.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I don't know.
yeah,
I'd be really interested to see what they're doing with that.
yeah.
I think this is. I still think that this, as much as it bummed me out that the last numbered title would be 16. I really do think this is the time to ditch numbers.
It
Personally.
probably is. It probably
Yeah.
is, and I do hate it
Yeah.
because I do love the number, and I am an unk, and I want that
Yeah.
number there because that number feels so satisfying. It has, history behind it. It's very rich in
Yeah.
that sense, but marketing wise, it's probably time to ditch the number.
Yeah.
And I know no one likes that. I personally hate it, like I said, but
Yeah.
I do think that 17 will be the first one to make that attempt. And I'm really curious how they'll try to like actually set it aside from other like spin-off titles because unlike say like Resident Evil, for example, I mean Resident Evil obviously has plenty of spin-off titles, but I don't think anywhere near the amount that Final Fantasy has, or God of War, for example.
Yeah.
Like there's nowhere near the amount. Yeah.
And they also
Yeah.
perfectly crafted their plan to escape numbers, right?
Yeah.
And that's by, making a decision uh, 3 titles ago to
Hmm.
start, you know, incorporating the number into the title cleverly to the
Hmm.
point where we ship of Theseus the whole thing, and there's no X in the letter, or there's no letter X in the word requiem, but we all know
Yeah.
that's 9. And then one of the questions that Summer Games Fest that I found answering is like, I asked, why did you drop the code
Mm,
from the title for Code Veronica, and why is it just Veronica? And because they wanted to distinguish, because the word code just made it sound like a spinoff, and they wanted to make it clear that this was more akin to a mainline title. And so now they don't even have to follow that convention anymore. They're free of it. They're
yeah.
totally free of it. Like there's a bunch of people that are going to play Veronica and be like, uh, have no idea that it's a remake of of a of a bizarre branching path in the history of the Resident Evil, you know, franchise. And so
Yeah.
that takes a lot of foresight, planning, and confidence. And multiple development teams, quick turnaround time, probably your own fucking engine. Like there's a bunch of stuff that goes into being able to do that,
Right.
and that's hard. It's really
Yeah.
hard for Square Enix in its current developmental position to do.
Right. And like you said with like RE7, right? That's where they started to realize that and locked into it. Whereas I
Yeah.
feel like if they do try to do that with 17, it's like they're looking and they're like, oh shit, they're dropping the numbers. Dev
Yeah.
team, drop the numbers. We got to drop the
Yeah.
numbers. Everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
So I feel
Yeah. It
like,
once again feels reactive. It once again
yeah,
feels like a Game of Thrones thing. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's a tough position. Basarbe, thank you for the super chat. Neo Tweety Rider on Cage for any words. I'm gonna be honest, I have not played Neo, so I don't have a comment. I'm sorry. I love the first Tweety though.
Um, it was fine, I guess. It was, man, I don't know. I don't love it, but what are you gonna do? Like, I didn't really like the story of Neo very much.
Mm,
But I just also am not that kind of like, I in fairness, it felt like a maybe oversaturated genre in anime and manga and even games at that point.
mm-hmm,
And yeah, see, and this is another thing. It's like, when there are these missteps when it tries to lean too heavily into this anime thing, and so
mm,
into the anime aesthetic. There is this layer of separation between Square Enix's identity and it, and when it goes back that they've had some misses, um, so it's always hard, to really predict anything or do anything. You really just have to get it's you need a lot of, you either need uh, like totalitarian vision, like Capcom has,
mm-hmm.
or lightning in a bottle, like Sandfall had, you know, and or incredibly scalable, deliverable products that don't cost a ton, like Persona has. I'm not going to speak to the entire company because that company does have its missteps. A good portion of that company doesn't do as well. But it's got, these bangers, and Persona is definitely one of them. It doesn't cost a ton. Metaphor didn't cost a ton, but it still, captures the heart of both Japan and then, the weekend, and so, those things can kind of, complement themselves, and it's easier to react to trends if you've got a year to do it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, and that's the problem, like
yeah,
all this stuff is planned and then it happens 8 years later. And so
yeah,
you can't even predict the industry trends because you'll be in a completely different industry by the
mm-hmm.
time the product launches. I mean, looking back at like Final Fantasy 16, despite the way I feel about that game, I think if they
Yeah,
launched it on PlayStation 3, it would have been a 10 million seller. I'm not even kidding. I think if they launched it on PS3 back, it would have really connected with people, or even early PS4. I think
I
that
think
would have
mid
been,
PS4.
yeah,
If it
that
had
would have
if
been
it had
a
if
banger.
it had launched in 2018, it would have been it
Yeah,
would have been a revolutionary
yeah,
game. Yeah.
yeah. It would have
Yeah.
been huge. People would have loved it.
Yeah.
I think it would have
Yeah.
been big, but yeah, it launched years later, and I think that the industry like looked back at it and they were like, "This feels dated, other than the presentation,"
Yeah.
and it just didn't click for people like that.
Yeah.
So I have to ask. This is a question I
Mm-hmm.
asked Jacob when I had him on, and it's a question I
Mm-hmm.
asked Daryl when I had him on as well. Does
Mm-hmm.
Revelation sell the same, more, or less than Rebirth?
A little less,
A little less. Okay.
probably.
Yeah.
Although it might
Mm.
sell faster at launch, because
Yeah.
of the multi-platform release. Um, but I still think that what it will do is increase the remake series' sales overall in a way that justifies its existence, even if it has the highest production cost of any of the three games. And it's actually, I mean, with inflation, that's easier to do now. But you know, beating beating R1's development costs is actually a pretty heavy goal because of how expensive the transfer of power was, from in-house to CC2. And that was an expensive thing. And the thing that always really runs up the development cost of something is usually the amount of time it takes to develop, because you're paying people are generally the biggest line item overall. And
Mm-hmm.
so but I don't think that this is going to be the Witcher 3 of Final Fantasy VII games, where it completely demolishes the sales of Witcher 1 and 2. Um, and I think this experience is too dependent on the first two. And I think they would serve themselves well by not trying to say otherwise to people.
Yeah.
Um, but there's no way that this will sell more than Revelation. It may perform better at launch, though. Um, you know, and I think eventually one day we'll get you know full trilogy sales numbers, and that we'll I think we'll look back 5 years from now and recognize that the series was very profitable, and that the series itself had much less of an impact on whether or not the brand of Final Fantasy thrived or died than the mainline titles did. You know,
Oh, 100%.
yeah,
100%.
I think it's its own conversation about relevance. I think it will. I think it's already financially justified itself. But in terms of brand identity, I don't think it's going to have a negative impact at all on what Final Fantasy is to people. And that's ultimately going to be a conversation that we have to have. Um, when I think the make or break title of the brand comes out, and that's whatever the next main one is. You know, whether it be
D-
17 or you know Final Fantasy. Yeah, whether that's a
17
different.
has so much weight on it in that sense, because
Mhm.
if 17 is even remotely perceived in the way that 13, 15, and 16 were, I feel like it's vaguely over in terms of like FF as we currently know it. I can't.
I would
Yeah.
argue even 12. I would argue even 12
Yeah.
belongs
Yeah,
in this.
probably even 12's level of controversy would like probably decimate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I legitimately don't know what they do. Like I have ideas about what I want and what I think people want, but even then, I feel like when you actually turn that into a real product and then 5 or 6 years or now from now, whenever it actually launches, or hopefully it's not that long. My assumption is that it went into development a year before 16 launched, because that seems to be the pattern that they've had going on. But it completely different industry, completely different desires, different people in some cases, as people
Mm-hmm.
age up into the industry, and some people age out either due to
Yeah.
death, illnesses, just getting old, having kids, and not having
Yeah.
time for gaming, whatever. And so there's just like there's so many different things that they can do, but I think they have to come up with something that probably is not going to polarize half their audience against them, and then have the other half be like, what do you mean this is the best thing ever? And this is the same type of cycle that we've been going in over and over and over again, where the next Final Fantasy has to kind of come in and be like an apology for the rest of modern Final Fantasy before it ends up joining the collection of controversial modern Final Fantasy games, right?
Right.
13, like 13 was kind of the apology for people that didn't like 12. And then
It was.
15 was the apology for people that didn't like 13. And then 16 was the apology for people who didn't like all the other titles. And
Yeah.
then
Didn't like Final
17,
Fantasy. Yeah.
right. And now 17 has
Yeah.
to be the apology for people that didn't like 16.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
just like, where does it end, man? Where does it end?
And also like, an apology to people that, don't want them to just make Expedition 32. Like there, it's gotta like, it's a really impossible balance. Like Final Fantasy still does have to be, like we've had this conversation before, and I think we had it with Mike of Resonant Arc, and like talking about what kind of restaurant is Final Fantasy,
Yeah.
um, and I think Jacob has said something like this too, that like the best is the brand, right? Has to be the best, and so that puts it as like a Michelin star restaurant. And the thing about Michelin star restaurants is they often don't have menus, and
Right.
so you're really beholden to whatever you're being told you're going to get. And so they can decide to move away from that, for a while, which is what Konami did, and so we get some remakes that fund more experimental things like Silent Hill F, which in my opinion is a better game than Silent Hill 2 remake.
Based.
But certainly, you know, sold less, and I have a prediction that Final Fantasy Resonance is probably going to financially outperform Final Fantasy 16,
Mm.
and maybe not sell as many, but it'll outperform because its budget's lower, etc. You know, and that incentivizes this kind of lack of taking and stuff like that. And um, you know, and also it feels very reactive, and it changes what our idea of Final Fantasy is, from being the best to the turn-based origin of most of the anime fantasy anime we see now.
Right.
Like that's really all that it becomes at that point. And so I hope it doesn't become that. I hope 17 is something that's so weird and different and challenges the form. If but if not, I'll just look to Toby Fox, because if you guys haven't played Deltarune Chapter 5 yet, it completely demolishes the very notion of what game making is in the most creative and interesting way. And you know um, I would like there to be a space for AAA and big gaming companies to take risks like that again too soon, but I just don't see it happening. I just don't. Not
Mm.
in our economy.
100%. 100%. Um, I, and maybe this sounds crazy to people,
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be a form pushing title, like you mentioned. And I kind of want it to be the latter part of what you mentioned, which is something that kind of evokes the gameplay and aesthetic soul of Final Fantasy. Like I wanted to like
Mm-hmm.
do both of those things at the same time.
Yeah.
Actually, a great example of that would be the 7R's gameplay. Like 7R series
Hmm.
gameplay is something that
Yeah.
I feel like is very new in the broader spectrum of action games. There's really no other action game that plays quite like the 7R games do. At the same
Yeah.
time, the soul of that game is still Final Fantasy VII's gameplay. And so I
Yeah.
feel like there's a way to introduce something revolutionary gameplay wise that also doesn't abandon the essence of what that game is about. Another example of that for me, and some Zelda fans may disagree, but they're wrong. I think that kind of the Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom games are still fundamentally at their core about like the essence of what Zelda is, but they're also brand new video games that are quite different from the previous 3D Zelda games. But when you play it, it's still Zelda at its core. It may not be like your favorite brand of Zelda, but it's like undeniably Zelda in a deep way. And so that's what I would want Final Fantasy 17 to be. I would want it to be
Yeah.
something that is deeply Final Fantasy, but it achieves being deeply Final Fantasy in a way that has not been seen before. And that
Yeah.
sounds vague, and it is vague, but
Yeah.
it's to
But that's
say
what we
that,
need.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. But that's what we
Yeah.
need, right? Yeah,
Yeah. We
um,
need $1 million in a pony. I mean, like, I hate to say it, but we're really close to lightning in a bottle territory. Like,
right,
that's really what we need. And that's, I mean, nobody expected Breath of the Wild to be the next iteration of Zelda when it came out.
right.
Zero people.
And I was at a point too where I was kind of like getting maybe like a little bit bored of Zelda after
Yeah.
Skyward Sword. So I didn't check out Breath of the Wild for years.
Yeah.
I refused to touch it. Even with people saying it was like it's a very different game and it's moved forward from the original Zelda formula, I was so burnt out by the time I got the Skyward Sword of Zelda's a 3D Zelda's formula that I was kind of just like, I don't even care anymore, man.
Yeah.
And then eventually I got around to playing Tears and I got around to playing Breath of the Wild and I really enjoyed it, but it took a very long time for me
Yeah.
to do that because they wrote on that formula for so long. Barasabe, thank you for the super chat, or Barsabe. He says, "How do you feel about Nojima as the story composer?" I assume you mean scenario writer. I love Nojima.
For 17 Kingdom Hearts 4 or for
He didn't
7R?
specify. I just
Okay.
assume, like in general, how do we feel
Um
about him?
I love him for 7R, and but I'd be totally okay for them to mix it up a little with 17.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't be terrible if they got Ishikawa.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't I but and as far as Kingdom Hearts as far as Kingdom Hearts 4 goes, I know that we've got the Twitter. One thing I'll say about what Kingdom Hearts writing is that the writer's responsibility is to try and synthesize very wide artistic story brushstrokes given by Nomura and turn them into something that um, makes sense to the rest of us, right? And that's a really hard job. And I do think that of all the people that have had the responsibility of doing that, Nojima has been the best.
Yeah.
I think Nojima's got the best way of translating Nomura into something that's
Mm-hmm.
more, yeah,
Yeah, like you play like
lingual.
Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 where he was the
Yeah,
writer on it, and then you play the subsequent Kingdom Hearts games, and I think it's like it's so weird because it's like the most abrupt yet subtle writing change, like change in like the actual writing staff that I've ever seen. Because on the surface, it looks like it's just more Kingdom Hearts, especially when you transition over to like Birth
Yeah,
by Sleep and Dream Job
yeah,
Distance. And that, but like as you go through the scenes and like the dialogue and like all these other things, you kind of realize that like the feel of Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 evaporates. And it's so subtle that you really don't notice it until you really start to dig into like, hey, these scenes used to be like a little bit more snappy, a little bit more playful and fun and their own unique way that was separate from how the games are doing it now. And it's not even necessarily to say that I think that everything after Kingdom Hearts 2's story is bad. But I just think that like there was a certain way that Nojima did it that I don't think subsequent Kingdom Hearts games writing wise have that make it as fun to watch the scenes, the scenario writing itself, that is, and as just engaging and accessible as the way Nojima was able to make some high level Nomura concepts work in terms of the
yeah,
actual story in a
yeah.
compelling
I
way.
agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
I think
think I
they're a
think
good.
he's really good. Yeah.
They're a good. Yeah, they're an overall good combo, and I would say even the parts that you can really tell are Nojima in Stranger of Paradise do this. I know it's all buried because the game's main scenario is actually written by somebody else, but there's all these little lore bits that you can tell. Oh yeah, this feels like the way that Nojima wraps up lore, and it's very got a very distinct translation of Nomura's thought process. So yeah,
Yeah, which is why Versus 13 would have been so awesome because we would have had both of them together
yeah,
again. And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, you know, last thoughts really quick with Final Fantasy Resonance. How are you feeling on that title?
Uh, I am. I feel very good about the fact that they have like I feel like it represents them being kind to their consumer uh, by one salvaging a dead um, gotcha title, utilizing art that real art that was made,
Mm-hmm.
by people by paid artists that put blood, sweat, tears into a mobile title, and I feel really good about using those parts of the buffalo, so to speak. And,
Mm-hmm.
so I, from a artistic integrity perspective, I really like that. I do feel some kind of way about the fact that it's had to come to that, but we're where we're at, and I'd rather them start making good decisions than continuing to make wrong ones. As far as the actual thing, I will say, like, chapters 1 and 2 of Brave Exvius were really good, so I'm like excited for this. Um, all of the I I don't love HD 2D in general. I will be honest, I don't love it. There's been two exceptions to that for me, and they're not the Octopath games. I don't like the art style of Octopath, but I love the Octopath games. I actually really like the DQ HD 2Ds a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and Adventures of Elliot is good in its own different way, but not visually. And so I will admit that I, I, I don't hate this, but I do wish, um, like, I hope that this isn't a precedent for a bunch of D makes that they're gonna make. Like I don't want this kind of to be. I don't want the only types of games they make to be HD2D as their. These are our double A titles, and then they focus on the big triple A's that are just within the main line of Final Fantasy, or like I'll be honest. Here's what I'm really getting at. My biggest fear with Final Fantasy Resonance is that it is going to create a precedence for an HD 2D remake of Chrono Trigger, which is my biggest fear. I
Yeah.
do not want an HD 2D remake of Chrono Trigger.
Mm.
I want whatever. If they redo Chrono Trigger, I want it to either be like a remaster just to make it as accessible as possible, kind of like what they did with uh, Tactics,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
or a real remake. I don't want the HD 2D style to touch that. I've got a real
100%.
bad feeling about that. And so, if it turns out that that's how it is, that's how it is. But I'm going to be personally disappointed. And that is my only gripe with Final Fantasy Resonance, is that I'm afraid that its success would set a precedence for a Chrono Trigger remake in HD 2D.
If Chrono Trigger remake doesn't look like Dragon Quest 11, I don't see a point, personally
I
speaking.
agree. I
Yeah,
agree.
like I
Yeah.
was just like let it rest. Like
Yeah.
like I just don't see any point of making that title in HD 2D.
Yeah.
Um yeah, yeah, you can just port it, do a pixel remaster of it, but an HD 2D Chrono Trigger like for me is just like so besides the point. I just don't even see like what that even adds at all. Like what do you have against HD 2D? Nothing. I just feel like if you're gonna remake Chrono Trigger, then like, or you mean maybe what Clark has against it? Um, I kind of feel in like the same along the same lines as him though too. Resonance to me is like the best looking HD 2D game by a mile. I like the way the Dragon Quest games look, but I'm actually also not a huge fan of the way Octopath looks. I feel like it looks like kind of in a lot of scenes washed out, kind of. It's not as vibrant looking. I don't like some of the lighting effects. I feel like they're too strong and overdone in Octopath, but I feel like they got it right in the Dragon Quest games and even more right with Final Fantasy Resonance, because I look at Resonance and I think, wow, that's a gorgeous game, very vibrant, very smart use of the lighting and the coloring. I feel like it's all really incredible. Um,
I couldn't really tell you why I don't like it, and I'm not saying
yeah,
that it's not. It's an art opinion. It's very subjective. It's not necessarily based on validity, but I think the kids these days use the word soulless, sometimes to
mm,
describe things, and that's what I feel when I see it, is something that just feels a little soulless.
yeah,
It feels very yeah, manufactured in kind of all the wrong ways, and that's certainly not fair, because real artists you know put a lot of work into that. But when I see it, there's something close to uncanny valley that makes me uncomfortable.
yeah. I kind of just prefer traditional 2D. I wouldn't say I hate HD 2D, but I just kind of feel like, just make a
Yeah.
regular 2D game, bro.
Yeah.
Black Lion Guard, thank you so much for the 100 bits. What are your thoughts on shared mythos games like FNC? Do you think SE would or should attempt another shared mythos for a mainline? I think the shared
Nah.
mythos should be yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think the shared mythos is called Final Fantasy, and that should be the shared mythos, and they already kind of have
Yeah.
that, and yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I think one thing that you cannot remove from the identity of Final Fantasy is anthology.
Mm-hmm.
It's an anthology style of game, and that is something that it gives it more. It's a very double-edged sword. The fact that it's anthology, because there are freedoms that it grants you, but also, Resident Evil can also, when all else fails, they can break glass and bring in Leon. Like if they don't, if they get ridden into a corner, so they've got that. But I like seeing Final Fantasy stand on its own. I really like the anthology nature of things, and just uh, if you want to do spin-off titles that connect things like the mythos of things, I think the best place is in these side titles, in these standalone side titles, like Resonance and War of Final Fantasy is awesome. I love War of Final Fantasy or World of Final Fantasy, um,
Mm,
not War of the Visions. Although I hope that gets its own Resonance treatment, and I hope the same
mm,
happens for Ever Crisis too. I hope they figure out a way to save the game experience for that because you know but
yeah.
that's I think where the best place to keep um, have Avengers action happen
Right.
is in these little side titles.
Master Roshi, thank you so much for this super chat. Will we see FF Revelation at Gamescom or TGS? My answer is yes for both, honestly.
I think if I were to put money, I think we'll see it in the time frame of August, September.
Mm,
Its connection to those events is still it's a whatever thing. Um, I think we're going to be hearing a lot about those games around that time, or about Revelation around that time, just because it's time to do that. Like, it- you know, uh, I, Gamescom might be a little early,
mm,
if I'm being honest, but I think TGS for sure, and then there's also they've had things to look at is Rebirth had events around and stuff going on around the Comic Cons. So even those are fair play right now, and I think that we're going to see them kind of expand the way that they. I think they're really going to try and sell us the whole trilogy as much as possible. So I
mm-hmm.
think we're going to get a ton of stuff to react to, by the end of August. That's
Yeah,
my guess.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. And then I'll let this final question cap us out. Um, FF17 announcement win.
Hmm. Um, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I don't see it happening till maybe the end of 2028.
Really. I think feel like it has to happen in 2027, right? Because there will be
Yeah,
nothing major lined up for Final Fantasy brand. Like nothing. Evercold will be out. Revelation will be out. Resonance will be out. And so they'll just be like this black hole where Final
there,
Fantasy used to be.
and it'll be filled with Kingdom Hearts 4 and maybe a Netflix series and maybe that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. I
But
think
we've
that's a good year to
also,
do that.
yeah. But I think we've also like never in the franchise's history not
Yeah,
known what was next on the horizon. So I think that would be kind of a nerve-wracking time too to be
it would
like,
be.
oh,
Yeah,
yeah, we
yeah,
have no idea what's coming.
it would be. But who the only people that track that are like the are 0.2% of fans.
Yeah, the 0.2% of fans they have left, brother.
But I don't think they're making Final Fantasy 17 for.
Yeah,
I hate to say it, but us.
yeah.
I don't think. I think by the time it's within arm's reach, we will not be its market anymore. You know. I
That's
know.
that that's so ominous.
I know. I
I'm
know.
gonna I'm gonna have to get a job.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about that.
Oh no, that's like the worst news I could possibly hear,
We could
bro.
just hope for the heat death of the universe or something. I mean,
There
who
you go.
knows?
That's even
Yeah.
better. What will I do? What will I do? All right, I think that's gonna be a good place to find to cap things off. Tell
Yeah.
people about where they can find you, and tell them that they need to watch Heather play Final Fantasy VII Remake because it's been such a joy for me to stop by these streams and see someone with fresh eyes go through that game.
Yeah, that is fun. And so yeah, you can find my channel links. It's just Schrodinger's Baby Seal at the different stuff. Schrodinger's Baby Seal at YouTube and at Twitch, and I'm trying to be live on both. Thursday nights, with rare exceptions, is when me and my doctor wife, who has a specialty in human behavior, cracks apart Final Fantasy VII, and it's really unnerving to watch her catch things. That it's taken me years of study to catch, and so it's a very fascinating look at how well designed the characters in Final Fantasy VII are, and how much the legacy of them goes into every decision that they make. And she has no context for the game. She's never played Final Fantasy VII. She doesn't know any of these characters other than by name and by me having plushies of them, and having these esoteric conversations with my friends about it. So it's a really fun series. And then I do have my podcast, SEAL Team 7, where I get various guests and we talk about Final Fantasy VII. I've got several people lined up that are in the theory crafting community, that are in the make more gameplay oriented guests lined up, and Ryan himself is a frequent guest of the show, and so please check me out there. Thanks a bunch, and thanks for having me.
Anytime, man. Let's
And
see.
I
Can
just
we
want to
give?
close with
Yeah.
this. I want to close with this. Okay. I just want to say
Uh,
that this year
uh,
I got I got very, very, very sick. I almost
mm,
died, and it was in a foreign country, and that as soon as Ryan found out, he was screaming from the rooftops about it to help me get out of the country. And I'm really grateful to him as a friend. And I know that he was on here talking to you, telling you about that. And that I just I wanted you all to say that if you've invested time in Night Sky Prince and Ryan as a human being, it's well worth it, because he's a good person and a really good friend, and I love him dearly.
oh, bro. Thank you so much. That means a lot. You know, I always got your back. It's
I
crazy
know.
to think.
Likewise.
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
became friends, like genuine friends. Like
Yeah.
maybe one of the closest people, like closest friends that I have
Yeah.
in
Same.
life. And
Yeah.
it all started with us arguing over this fucking video game.
Yeah. I know. I know that we barely
It's
talk
just
about now. Yeah.
yeah, that
Yeah.
we don't even talk about like now,
Yeah.
like really even
Yeah.
in our personal chats. It's just
Yeah.
like it's really kind of funny
Yeah.
how life kind of works in that aspect, you know. It was just
Yeah.
really the game was just a means for us, universe pushing that in order for
It
us to
was the
connect and
friends
become
we made along the way. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the destiny that we defy, chat.
Yeah.
Just being two people arguing in a comment section, and now we're best friends.
Love it.
All right, love you guys so much. If you're on Twitch, we'll raid Curious Joy, our good
Yeah.
friend, and if you're on YouTube, I still think they don't have a fucking raid feature, so
They
that's
do,
really
but it's very hard. It's
yeah,
yeah. We'll figure it
and it
out. Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, love you guys so much. Take care.
Bye, guys. All right.
And we're good. Thanks so much, brother. Solid episode.
Yeah.
I realized I didn't hit record actually on Riverside,
Oh shit.
but
Oh
it's
well.
yeah, but it's okay because the thing came out in high quality anyway. So I won't have to like I don't have no need to separate the audio channels or do any
Okay.
of that shit. Yeah, because it's totally fine. So okay, I'm gonna hit the gym.
Yeah, I
I'll
think
talk to
so.
you soon. Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
same.
All right. Talk to you
Talk
soon.
to you soon, brother.
All right. Bye bye.